Hi, this is Donna Summer, and you're listening to my favorite DJ, Jimmy Deal.
Okay, Jimmy, go ahead.
Welcome to the Real Jimmy Deal Show. This is the Real Celebrity Spotlight featuring Doc G. My guest today is a true Hollywood legend. She's done it all and more in Hollywood. It's an honor to have her on the show. Thank you for being here, Miss Donna Loren. Hey, Donna.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. It's very nice to see both of you.
Oh, it's great to see you too. You've done so much in your career. You're a recording artist, an actress, author. You have your own podcast, which you're going to tell us about, and a book.
Uh-oh.
It's an honor.
Where are
Oh, we're looking at pictures. Cool. We're looking at a picture of Burt Ward.
There you go.
And Adam West and you as well.
Yes. And the gymnast was whom?
Now, you were born in Boston. You grew up in West Hollywood, went to Venice High School right there by Muscle Beach, which became a big part of your film career later on, right? I mean, because
Yes. Well, let me
movies.
correct you. I'll just correct you slightly because I was raised in a place called Mar Vista.
Oh, okay.
And Mar Vista is a seaside community. And Venice High School is in that area. So we're talking like Santa Monica, Venice Beach, all along the Pacific Coast Highway. That's where I grew up.
Right. And you were the Dr. Pepper girl, and you did so much with that, right?
Yes, by the time I was 16, I signed a 7-year contract to do all their commercials and traveling and representing the company. I mean, a teenager representing a company, it's kind of crazy.
You did all those cool commercials, and you toured also, I think, with Dick Clark, right? You did some appearances with Dick Clark with the with Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, well, Dick and I both were involved in the company of Dr. Pepper.
Mhm.
And so he and I did commercials together. We did personal appearances together. We toured together. And he invited me on Bandstand a couple times. So
Awesome.
actually, the first time I met Dick, you'll see it on YouTube, was Dr. Pepper had me go to a Hollywood party, and where Dick Clark was hosting a group of celebrities. Some of them I was familiar with, but I had never met him before. And literally, when I arrived, I was 16, and shook his hand with one hand, and in the other hand was handed a microphone. And I was co-hosting suddenly with Dick Clark for
Wow.
an hour special on ABC television nationwide.
Awesome is that?
And performing as well. That was I believe that was in October. According to my diary, with the podcast, what I do is I'm basically reading from a manuscript that is my autobiography.
Mhm.
So I'm getting more familiar with my own life, essentially.
Of course. Tell me about Dick Clark. Was he fun to hang out with? Fun to work with?
He was a total devotee to rock and roll. And when we traveled together, he never separated himself from any of the artists. And on tour, we would end up staying in some quote unquote sleazy places where a mixed group of African American and white artists in the South in the 60s or the Midwest weren't very welcome. And Dick would never separate himself. He would always go to these old flea bags if that's,
Really?
if that's where they would take us.
Wow. That's interesting.
Or we would sleep on the bus, because there were 2 buses, one bus for the artists and one bus for the crew and the orchestra. And we would caravan throughout, the Midwest and South.
Wow. And when you were growing up, you won a lot of talent contests right around California. That's also how you started, right?
Yes. Right around the age of 5.
Wow.
My mother convinced me. She kind of wrangled me, kind of bribed me actually, because there was a man that I used to call Uncle Don, who lived up the street from where I lived. And he had an old Model T with a rumble seat.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to babysit me up at his little place. And so one day my mother said, you know, if you want to ride in this rumble seat, you know, Uncle Don can drive you to this event, and I'll teach you a song. I'll teach you How Much Is That Doggy in the Window at the time. And you'll sing that song. So yeah, that's how it all started. And then I did quite a few of the local television shows. There were amateur shows, kind of like American Idol.
Right.
But back in those days, it wasn't nationwide. I think the only nationwide one was coming from New York. It was Arthur Godfrey.
Oh, okay. Now tell me about Disney and tell me about the Mickey Mouse Club. That had to be unbelievable to do that.
Yeah, that was on my 10th birthday.
Wow. 10 years old. Imagine.
So, you know, well, if you go onto my podcast, I go into great detail, but essentially where I lived by the beach, my mother didn't drive, and I had two younger half brothers. My dad was my adopted dad. My mother was my biological mother. And we would get on the bus, all four of us. My dad actually was an animator at Disney Studios at the time.
Okay.
And so we'd get on the bus and travel, I don't know for how long, but, you know, 2-3 buses to get to Burbank, which was like in the middle of nowhere compared to where we were. And meet up on this big sound stage to audition. And my dad told the animation department that I was there to audition. And so he took a break, met me on the set. And when I auditioned, I had to stand in front. Now, this is a cattle call of many, many children, maybe 30 plus children and their family, their parents, or, you know,
right,
whatever, guardians. And there was a table in this big sound stage filled with maybe half a dozen or more adults being from the Mickey Mouse Club. And so, you know, they'd call your name and you'd have to get up and do a little audition for them. And I sang a couple songs in a cappella.
Wow.
And they called me over to the table. And when they called me over to the table, my mother and my two younger brothers are sitting like back in the back, and my dad, Maury, would join me to the and so this crew of professionals said to my dad, you know, we want her to be a Mouseketeer. And to my surprise, because I had been groomed to basically take over responsibility of supplying income for my family. And, you know, basically my dad and my mom said, you know, you can earn more money than we can. And so, you know, that's what I was being groomed for. And my dad says to the people that were offering me this steady job, basically, no, she's a solo.
Well, you had a fantastic voice. What a beautiful voice. I've listened to so much of your music, and I mean, from when you were young till now, unbelievable, beautiful voice.
Thank you. Well, to my surprise, Jimmy, and Doc, wherever you are.
I'm here.
Hello. So I ended up doing a guest spot on the Talent Roundup, and I got my honorary ears. And it was an experience. That was my first time meeting Annette, and of course, she and I went on to make 5 movies together later on.
Yeah, the beach movies with Frankie Avalon, that must have been unbelievable. I met Frankie once. What a fantastic guy.
Yeah, well, everyone on the crew, you know, all the cast members, and of course all the guests. It was kind of a unique situation when I was asked to be in the first Beach Party movie. That was Muscle Beach Party, and the president of the advertising agency that represented Dr. Pepper was also a screenplay writer and co-producer of that movie. So when I was hired to represent the company, Dr. Pepper Company, they wanted to expand their company's business. They were a regional company, Midwest and South. They wanted to go coast to coast. And therefore, a teenager was chosen to represent a wider audience. And then I was put in this movie as product placement to bring in that teenage audience. And
great.
so that ended up being my first movie experience, but then it kind of blossomed into a duet with Dick Dale when I found out that Brian Wilson had co-written a song and had gone into the studio and laid down the tracks and put his own vocal background on it, that Dick and I were going to sing over that. And that became the song Muscle Bustle.
Oh, what a great song. In fact, I was listening this morning on YouTube. What a fantastic song.
That was a lot of fun.
It was. Now, you recorded for a Challenge Record, right? And you did also recorded for Capitol and Reprise as well, right?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Well, I started out, I made my first record when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And that was on a label called Fable label.
Oh, okay.
Wow. And it was a little Christmas song called I Think It's Almost Christmas Time.
Right.
And then when I was about, I continued working on different labels, which I can't even remember the names of. But by the time I was 14, I got hired by a company called Crest. And Crest was a label as well as a publishing company. So they had songs, and what they wanted me to do initially is do the demos, the demonstration records for the songs.
Right.
And then that's when I met Glenn Campbell and Johnny Rivers, because they were also, and Jerry Naylor, who replaced Buddy Holly from the Crickets.
Wow. Awesome.
And we were all hired to sing, because we were all starting out, Glenn was, everyone was around 10 years older than I. So they were around 24 while I was 14. And we were all making these demonstration records for other artists. In the meantime, this guy from Texas rolls in, and his name is Jimmy Bowen, who ended up being Garth Brooks' producer, et cetera, et cetera. Oh. And I was his first production. So I was also included in their label, and that was my record, Hands Off. If you have a chance, listen to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You did so many great records. It was a really
good production. We did it at Gold Star Studios with the Wrecking Crew.
Uh-huh. I loved Wishing and Hoping. You did a fantastic job with it. That was on Shindig, right?
Yes, and I also made a record. Actually, Jimmy produced that with me. That was later on. But Wishing and Hoping, when Jack Good, the producer of Shindig, invited me to be a cast member, he said, what artists do you like? And one of them was Dusty Springfield. So he said, well, would you like to sing Wishing and Hoping? And I said, yes. So I was on the very first show that was aired with starring Sam Cooke. Wow. And the Wright brothers became cast members, and Bobby Sherman became a cast member. Even
Tina Turner, right? You worked with her on the Shindig as well?
Everyone was on Shindig. That was a totally extraordinary experience that, again, came into the time when Jack Good, the producer, was English. Mm-hmm. And he brought in English acts. He also loved R&B acts, so he loved Motown. And he loved, the East Coast. He loved the West Coast. He put it all together, the Beach Boys, the Philly sound, everyone converged. But the networks, they had a discrepancy because they didn't like mixing blacks and whites on the same stage.
Wow.
And so it was a big controversy, but Jack Good confronted them, and they never really, actually, he said, put it down in writing, and they never did. So we went on the air and became #1 immediately.
Wow. In 1964, you released several singles and Beach Blanket Bingo. Tell me about that, the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Beach Blanket Bingo was the what was it? I think it was the third or fourth movie that I did. And when that movie was made, starting with Beach Party, which I was not in, but Muscle Beach, Pajama Party, Bikini Beach. By the time we got to Beach Blanket Bingo, it became a phenomenon for surfing, for audiences all over the country that had never seen the ocean.
Wow.
And, just that whole entire experience of being in Malibu, was magical.
What a beautiful place.
And so by the time Beach Blanket Bingo was filmed, it was almost an immediate hit. And so Capitol Records decided, well, okay, we're going to take you in and do an album with you. And that's how that happened.
Wow. Now, when you were on Capitol Records, I think the Beatles were also there as well. Did you ever meet the Beatles?
I met two of the Beatles. Actually, let's see. I never met John Lennon. I met George Harrison and I saw Ringo. I never met Paul McCartney.
Really?
But I kind of knew him through my son, who became a musician that worked with Paul McCartney. So inadvertently.
Wow.
But yeah, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and myself, and oh my gosh, so many artists. I remember singing through the same microphone at the Capitol Studios, that tower building in Hollywood.
I know it.
Through the same microphone that Frank Sinatra used to sing.
I was going to ask you about recording reprise records. Did you meet Frank and Dean and Sammy? I mean, I know they've recorded there as well.
Well, now that when they were on Reprise, I don't know if they recorded at the. I have a low battery.
Oh boy.
So we'll have to wrap it up in 20%.
Okay, so you know what we'll do? We'll jump to Batman. Let's go to Batman.
Yeah, Batman. Go to Batman. Yeah.
Let's go to Batman. Tell me about Batman and working with Adam West. And you were a beautiful cheerleader.
Yes. Well, when Shindig was taken off the air because the network decided that they just had enough of the mixed races on the same stage, very typical. And obviously, we're still dealing with that issue today. Maybe not on television as much, but in our daily lives. It was replaced by Batman. And I really was quite fortunate, that I did my last show of Shindig and went straight into Batman as Susie the cheerleader with the Joker. I played his Maul in the beginning of the show. It was a two-part show. It was the Joker goes to school is the episode, and then meets his grisly ghoul was the second episode. And that's when Susie gained a conscience and became a good girl. So
wow. And you give Robin that iconic kiss.
Well, that was for TV Guide. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They came to do a publicity photo, and yeah, that's when he received.
That's a great photo. I love that photo. Really cool.
Try to bring that up again if I can.
Also, did you get to, let me ask you, did you did Batman, did you get to ride in the Batmobile at least?
Oh, well, I never actually rode in the Batmobile, but I did get to go down into the Bat Cave and took some photographs standing next to the Batmobile. Yeah. Nice.
Very, very nice. And what about the chemistry between Adam West and Burt Ward and yourself? They must have been both crazy about you, because you were a beautiful cheerleader on the show. And
yes, it was very charismatic because it was almost in the very beginning. I think I was on the 4th episode or something like that. And so it hadn't become, the sensation quite yet. It was just catching fire at the time.
Okay.
Adam West he was quite affectionate with me on set, and Burt Ward was also very shy, as per his photograph, standing next to me with his hands. He's, holding himself very proper.
Yeah. I guess Adam West always had the lead in that show, and Burt was a step behind, right? Pretty much on everything they did.
I would say so.
Wow.
You know what? I just got plugged in. Well, that's cool.
Oh, cool. You know what? Let me go to the Monkees real quick. One of my
Okay.
favorite TV shows. You got to kiss Davy Jones.
Oh, wow.
It was such a romantic kiss. There had to be something else going on behind the scenes. Tell me, is that it? Am I right?
Oh, well, who kissed who? Wait a minute.
I don't know.
No,
It's
Davy was a teen idol at that point. You know, I
Uh-huh.
had first met Davy on Shindig when he was a song and dance man.
right.
But by the time he became an official monkey, he was definitely a teen idol. And yes, we had a little personal moment, shall we say?
Oh, wow. So there you go. Some backstage secrets right there. So was there any romance going on with you and Burt Ward and Adam West or any of the other monkeys, or was that it? Just Davy Jones?
Are you asking me if I ever monkeyed around? Wait a minute.
Yes, exactly. In a roundabout way.
Well, I hope this isn't a disappointment, but I think I was the only virgin in Hollywood. You know,
Really?
I was the Dr. Pepper girl. I always had my adopted father within several feet away from me. I always had a Dr. Pepper representative always there to make sure that, you know, I was very protected. And everyone knew that wherever I went. So my socialization was limited.
Especially working on the Muscle Beach movies. I'm sure a lot of those guys must have asked you for a date and stuff like that, right?
They never got that close.
Really? Okay. So your dad did a pretty good job.
Well, between my dad and the representative from Dr. Pepper, I mean, there were the two of them were generally within a short leash away, shall we say.
Wow. And you also did the Danny Thomas show and Gomer Pyle. Wow.
Yes.
Jim Neighbors. Tell me about Jim Neighbors. He must have been fun to work with because that whole cast looks like it's such a fun cast to hang out with.
He was a complete professional. I mean, that one scene I enjoyed so much with him when I had to do sort of a choreography, it was a comedic choreography in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of dodging my parents from them knowing that my boyfriend slipped in to visit me. And Jim Neighbors was so supportive. There was one scene I was looking out the window and because my boyfriend was down below trying to, you know, make plans with me and
Well, that must have been
Jim
pretty
Neighbors,
frustrating for him, I'm sure.
and I bumped my head on the window and Jim Neighbors was right there with me. He stuck his head out the window and he saw my eyes go, whoa, you know, I saw stars. But his professionalism just kind of like created a resilience. And so I bounced right back and got back into the scene. Of course, later on, I had a little bump there, you know.
Don, I want to ask you, was Jim Neighbors' voice goofy or was it like the singing voice when he talked?
Oh, truly. That's a great question. He had that duality. His speaking voice was very much like his Gomer Pyle voice. Maybe a tiny bit exaggerated because he added that little twang to it. You know, and he had his colloquialism, you know, the golly and the Shazam. But no, yeah, very, very different register in his voice.
Very cool.
Now, most of those shows were on Desilu. So did you actually meet Lucy and Ricky?
I met, just a moment. I met, Desi Arnaz, but I met him. I never met Lucy, but I met Desi Arnaz because he was directing and I'm not sure writing a show called Mothers-in-Law starring Eve Arden.
Oh, I love that show.
Okay.
And it was a live audience. And so I did a part on that show as well.
What part were you on that show? Did you just like play a neighbor or a friend?
I don't recall the name. I think I was to marry someone and there was disapproval and, you know, it was one of those kind of arrangements. But I was a starring role in one of their episodes.
Oh, one other question.
And Dr. Kildare.
Yes, Dr. Kildare. Oh, yes, Richard Chamberlain. What a divine person. And Raymond Massey as well. Just their voices alone, was just a pleasure to be around. Again,
Wow.
and Cloris Leachman and Leslie Nielsen were starring in that.
Wow.
With, it was a 7-part episode about dialysis, when dialysis was just, being introduced. And I was a
Right.
candidate for dialysis. Now, this happened, this is a little bit of a long story, but this took place, I was at MGM Studios in Culver City, now Sony Studios. And
Yep.
it happened in the summer of 1965, I think. And I was working consistently throughout these 7-part episodes, because they were each one of these candidates. One was Cloris Leachman, one was Leslie Nielsen, one was myself, and there were a couple of others. And I had an occasion to see Cloris Leachman, who
Mhm.
I don't know how old she is now. Is she like 90 or something?
She's got to be up there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the exact age.
I mean, what an
Yeah.
amazing actress. So I was in the wings and kind of watching her prepare for a scene. And it was my first time that I had the occasion to see someone prepare themselves to cry. And so the director, Mark Daniels, walks over to Cloris Leachman and says, 5 minutes, and, it's your scene coming up. So she goes off to a dark corner, and I happened to see her. And she prepared herself within 5 minutes and came right back on set when it was time to take one. And
Wow.
the tears were just streaming.
Oh, wow.
So that was quite an exceptional experience.
I'm sure it wasn't an easy character for you to play.
Well,
Yeah.
my own, yes, because I played a young mother. I had a small child, and I was married, and kind of a impoverished status. So I was on a waiting list, and finally, I was given an opportunity. They were going to save my life because I had a baby and a husband.
Right.
So by the end of that day, when I had my big final scene, something really tragic happened to me personally. My dad was on set, and he collapsed.
Oh, you're kidding.
He had kind of like a seizure or something, and he was taken away. He needed surgery from, I think it was like his colon or something burst.
Hmm.
But I had to stay on set. My mother met him at the hospital, and the pressure was on me. I had to work. And by the end of that day, not knowing the status of my dad's well-being,
Mhm.
I had to ask my co-actor, the guy that played my husband, for a ride home. I lived in the area, so it wasn't too out of his way. We leave MGM Studios to a blaze in the mountains nearby Baldwin Hills. That was when the Watts riots were happening. So all of that happened in one day. If you happen to watch Dr. Kildare, I'm just giving you the background for what was happening in those times.
Yeah. That's, an amazing thing. Also, I wanted to ask you about Milton Berle. I know you were on the Milton Berle show.
That's right. And he was at the Hollywood Palace. He was making his comeback, of all things, Mr. Television.
Hmm.
And so again, he was looking for cast members. So I was hired to do several of those shows for him. And working with different comedians of that caliber, I got to know the kind of people they were. They were never off. They were always on. And at the Beach Party movies, I was around Don Rickles and, people like that, who they have a lethal tongue, right?
Right, exactly.
But fortunately, I observed other people, being victimized by these guys that just were like thrashing them. Milton Berle, there was one scene where he did a skit with a character actress, and she arrived for rehearsal on crutches.
Oh,
She had
wow.
a cast on one leg. And she's like, go easy on me, for rehearsal. And then, I'll do my best for when we're on camera live. And he was merciless. Milton Berle was throwing her around at rehearsal.
Oh,
She should
wow.
have never even said anything.
And you did that with Bobby Rydell as well, right?
Bobby Rydell and I did a duet. It started out, we had costume changes on set. So we had to do our costume, like we had wigs, we had hats. We started out as Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy. Then we went to Keely Smith and Louis Prima.
Oh,
then
wow.
we went to Sonny and Cher. That's how we ended up. So.
Wow. In 2009, you released Magic, an 80s collection, right? And you recorded a bunch of songs. Could This Be Magic? And you worked with Elvis's band on some of those cuts.
I'm sorry, who?
Elvis Presley's band.
Oh, right. Well, James Burton.
James Burton, you got, and Ronnie Tutt and Glenn
Yes.
Schiff, I believe. Yep.
Yep.
How was it like? What was it like working with Elvis's band?
Well, I met James when I was 8 years old.
Mhm.
And then he was also on the Shindig band. So we knew each other quite well. And by the time in the 80s is when I started recording again. I
Mhm.
was in the midst of separating from my first husband. And going into the studio was, like rehabilitation for me, because I hadn't really, I devoted myself when I was 21 to be a mother and a wife.
Right.
And I did that for almost 15 years until my marriage started dissolving. And I went back in the studio. I started writing songs, and James kind of came back into my life and took me back into the studio with his band, and that backed Elvis. And, it was great to work with James. That was familiar. Then I brought in, I think his name was Sid. I want to say Sid Sharp. Anyway,
Okay.
he was a violinist, like that used to record with me when I was young,
Right.
and I put together a string section, for that production.
Wow.
Anyway, all of that stuff was never really meant to be heard. It was just kind of like my therapy.
Really?
And when I moved to Hawaii in 1995, with my prom date became my second husband.
Wow.
Yes, my prom date, Jared.
That's unheard of in Hollywood. So that says a lot about you.
Well, we've known each other since I was 17, he's 18, and now we're in our blah, blah, blah.
Wow. Yeah.
We've known each other almost all our lives, but and our family is actually my first family, my first husband, and he kind of we all were friends, and so when the transition occurred, we were all familiar with each other, which made it a little bit more comforting. So, but anyway, when we moved to Hawaii in 1995, Jared and I, he saw this box and he was like, what is this? And it was just a dusty old box by then. And he opened it up and he saw these masters and whatever. And he said, can I do something with them? And that's how Magic evolved.
Wow. Elvis was a big influence on your career, right? I mean, you were a big Elvis fan.
Absolutely. Who wasn't?
Of course.
Until
I know I'm a huge Elvis fan.
Yeah, until the Beatles came in, Elvis was king. And I really think that Colonel Parker stopped Elvis from touring, the way that Elvis wanted to tour. Colonel Parker wanted him to be a movie star, and he kind of kept him isolated in that way. And I guess the farthest he went to Germany as a soldier, but
Right.
farthest he ever traveled was Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, he never went to the UK, never performed outside. I think he performed in Canada at one point, and that was
did
that.
he?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but
Well, so Elvis, on my 18th birthday, I was on the Shindig set, and I was called over to the phone, which was on this like like a podium, like a black podium on the set. And it was Elvis's driver. And he says, I'm in a limo. Elvis asked me to pick you up and take you to his house.
Wow.
And I said, well, it's my 18th birthday. And, you know, I never go anywhere unchaperoned. And he said, well, you know, Elvis wants to give you a birthday gift, you know, so meet me out here and come into the limo. And again, like I say, Jimmy, maybe to your disappointment, you know, I was maybe the first and last virgin in Hollywood, but
Wow.
at any rate, I declined. And
Amazing.
so I never officially met Elvis, but I used to see him around. And
Really?
because I was in West Hollywood recording, and, you know, and he would sneak out in this really old junky Falcon.
Really? Oh,
And
how cool is
yeah,
that?
and because he couldn't drive a Cadillac, he would get too much attention.
Sure.
So he'd get in this old jalopy, but he'd stick his head out the window, you know. And so yeah, I used to see him driving around. But
oh, that's so awesome.
and I auditioned. Hal Wallace had me come in and audition for one of the films to star with Elvis, and I was overly occupied with Dr. Pepper. I didn't have time to do it.
Oh, wow. How was Hal Wallace when you met him?
Oh, excellent. Just
Was he?
super professional.
Really? Wow.
But when I was in Hawaii, and you know, my second husband Jared and I lived there for many years. But when it was time for us to come back to California 10 years ago, I was so sad to leave Hawaii, and I felt a bond with Elvis, and so I decided to go back into the studio and do an EP.
Look at that. There you go.
Yeah, and do an EP in homage to Elvis.
Yep, Donna does Elvis in Hawaii. What a cool CD.
Thank you.
I have the CD, and you actually signed it for me too. I have the sign on the CD. Check that out.
Right on.
But it's awesome, and I heard you do. I think it was "Love Me" on YouTube. What a fantastic job you did with that song. Oh my God.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, really, really good. Oh, I mean, Elvis I'm a big Elvis fan, and so it's an honor to talk to somebody who actually was associated with him somehow, and he got to call you on your 18th birthday. How cool is that?
Yes. Well, as they say, maybe it was like 6 degrees of separations, you know.
Now you have a book out, right? It's called The Pop 60s. Tell me about that, and how can you get it? I'm sure a lot of people want to find out a lot more about your life and times.
Well, you can find it on Amazon, and you can also buy it on my website, which is donnaloren.com. And my adopted father, who raised me and became my manager, traveled with me. He was a very, very excellent photographer. So while I was touring and while I was working, he would always take behind the scenes photos. And some of them ended up on magazine covers. Mm-hmm. But you know, he passed away at the end of the 20th century, and I inherited all of those slides that he did. So I had them digitized and kind of reviewed them with a friend, Dominic Priori, who was a kind of a pop culture author. Right. And he decided to partner with me and collaborate on a book based on the archive, my personal archive of photos from 1963 to 1968, my career, but even from my childhood forward.
Oh, that's awesome. Maybe one day that'll actually be a movie. I mean, your life is so interesting. You've done it all in Hollywood. Yes. And I'm sure that would be great on the big screen.
Well, you never know. We'll see what happens.
We hope. Tell me about the podcast. You're doing a podcast, right? And tell me more about that and how people can get to listen.
Perfect. Well, the Pop 60s book was kind of a precursor. I did a very modified, abbreviated autobiography within the photographs. But I had met excuse me, take a drink.
Sure.
I had met a young man who lived in Australia, in Adelaide, Australia, who was studying psychology. And we became friends. And then he got his PhD. And we talked about doing a project together. And so, because my life became pretty complicated, when I was almost 50, I found out that the man who raised me, I thought was my biological father. Well, he wasn't.
Oh,
And
wow.
but I didn't know that until I was almost 50.
Mm.
And so it did a number on me. And I needed to work it out. And Dr. Adam came to my rescue. So we started writing about it because I love to write.
Mhm.
And we started an in-depth study of my autobiography, which took almost 5 years to complete. A lot of introspection, a lot of studying of behavior and why things happen and why you do the things you do,
Right.
and then that kind of sat on the shelf. Well, when the coronavirus decided to become part of our way of
I was
life,
here, I know.
yes, I talked to Dr. Adam, and I said, I really feel like sharing my story, but I'm getting this feeling that I want to read my story, and then you and I talk about it. So then I got the idea of the song that I sang in Bikini Beach, "Love's a Secret Weapon."
Right.
I decided, well, let's call a podcast "Love's a Secret Weapon." Love is a secret weapon in these times of coronavirus and all
Mhm.
this political strife and the environment. So, let's take my little story and expand it into a discussion of behavior. And you can make sense of me and my life, and, and in general, maybe other people can relate to it. And we can add music and have some interviews. And so that's kind of how it started. And now we have, I think, 14 episodes. And this coming, let's see, what's today? Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday, yeah. Veterans
Wednesday.
Day. Yep.
So, okay, oh, that's right, 11/11.
Got to remember all
So-
the veterans out there.
So tomorrow is every Thursday we have a new episode. And tomorrow is my episode talking to Brian Hyland, the
Oh,
itsy
nice.
bitsy
Wow,
teeny
I love
weeny
Brian
yellow polka dot bikini
Yeah,
guy,
love him.
who's really a great guy. He and I were on the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars tour together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how can we get
Doc-
your podcast?
I'm sorry, Doc.
How can we get your podcast? Is it visual
Oh.
as well or just audio?
It's audio. You can get it on Spotify. It's
okay.
on Apple. It's on Google. It's on something called Anchor. And excuse me.
It's okay.
And it's quite available. I haven't done any Zoom at this point, but I think, because Adam and I are just evolving into this, that we'll probably add a visual
That's
aspect
what I'm
to it.
talking about. Yeah, because we're starting me and Jimmy, we're actually starting our own Roku channel. And I would love to have your podcast on there because we're actually going to a more spiritual and, we're trying to get celebrities involved and all that, but, it's just going to be a huge channel for us. And we'd love to have
Wonderful.
you.
Wonderful. I'd love that. That's marvelous. I'll talk to my collaborator about that.
Okay.
And see when we can actually,
Beautiful.
manifest.
Beautiful. I also have a friend of mine, Tammy Locke. She says hello. Do you know Tammy?
Hello, Tammy.
Tammy's a sweetheart. Okay.
I trust that she, yes.
No, Tammy was in roller derbies and the same movies like you were in. She's been in the Monroes, so many different shows, and she's been in music and everything. So yeah, it's
Great.
it's like
Great.
collaborating what you've done.
Perfect.
Donna, you've done so much with your life. What is your greatest accomplishment?
Oh my goodness. I think being a mom,
There you go. Family. I mean, you left Hollywood pretty much at 21 years old, right? And started a family. Do you have any regrets about that? I mean, but you're still going on. I mean, you're still doing stuff. I mean, but how do you look back on that?
Well, I always loved to sing, Jimmy. and Doc and Tammy. You know, it's when I was 2 years old, I remember sitting on a swing and, you know, and I heard Hank Williams' voice coming through a doorway, and he was singing "Your Cheatin' Heart," and that just struck me. And from then on, you know, singing became just a form of expression that never leaves me. I mean, whenever I have a chance, I sit down at the piano and, you know, express myself. You
That's
know?
awesome.
And just recently, actually, another friend of mine, Todd, suggested, "Oh, you know what? Well, that's another situation." Todd invited me. He and his partner are producers, and they did a documentary on Jane Mansfield, and it's
Oh,
more
cool.
like a not docu, well, yeah, more or less a docudrama. It's a 2-hour feature that you can find on Amazon. And they invited me to sing a song to be on over the titles of their movie.
Oh, okay.
So I, you know, I did that. But then another friend of mine, Troy, said, you know, I went on YouTube and I was listening to some of your songs, and there's a song that you sang called "Love It Away." And, you know, that was a song that I wrote like 10 years ago and recorded it. Basically, half of it was recorded in Hawaii simultaneously as I Skyped with an engineer and musicians in Los Angeles. So,
Okay.
I did one version of "Love It Away" in 2010. But Troy said, you know, I want to hear a dance beat. Here I am home alone and I want to move around, you know, can you think you can do that? So I called the engineer in Los Angeles and I said, can you change out the rhythm track and give me a dance beat? And so he did that. And so now I have a "Love It Away 2020 dance remix, which
wow.
is
There you
put to
go.
video. And I'm kind of excited about that one, just, you know, to have something new and fresh out there, and also put out that message, you know, love it away. That was my solution, you know, when I was depressed or when I was sad. It's like, love it away, you know.
Exactly.
And between "Love It Away" and "Love's a Secret Weapon," guess what my favorite word is?
There
Don't
you go.
know.
Love. Now, for any kids or young ladies who want to get into the show business or Hollywood right now, what advice would you give them?
Do what you love to do. Do your passion. If you feel like it's in your nature to perform, if it's in your nature to express yourself, if it's in your ability to learn a skill or adapt yourself to an instrument, but do what you love to do and do it with very strong conviction, because that's what we need on this planet. You know, we need people, all people, to do what they love to do. I mean, what else is life for? You know,
Exactly.
and who is to judge what that would determine? You know, it could be you're great in the garden and possibly you write a poem and that poem goes to a melody and that becomes a song, you
Right.
know, for everyone to enjoy.
Sure. Well, it's such an honor having you on my show. Thank you so much for being here. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you, darling. It's very lovely to be with you and Doc and Tammy.
Now, I know you, just one question before you leave. You've done autograph shows in New York. I know you've done, have you done the Chiller show, or I know you've done some
Yes,
shows.
a couple times. Yes, actually, I
So,
was there in Storm Sandy.
okay. So hopefully when this virus goes away, we'll see you back in New York and New Jersey doing something
We'll
again.
see what happens. We'll see.
Hopefully.
Corona may have her way for a while, you know. I mean,
No, let's hope not.
something has to shift the energy on this planet so we can get in a better direction and stop exploiting our resources.
Of course.
We have to stop burning trees. We have to stop cutting trees. We have to stop extracting oil. We must begin to love one another and accept one another for all of our differences and be one family, you know, because we are all one. We all came from stardust, you know.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So
We're all God's
Let's-
kids.
That's all God's children got rhythm. Yes, yes,
There you go.
yes, yes.
Well, you're always welcome back on my show. Anytime you want to come, you're welcome here.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Doc. Thank you,
welcome.
Tammy. And I will talk to Dr. Adam about your Roku.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. We'd love to have you on there. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
Donna, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.